Hey, this is Malika of Evanston Live TV, and I have with me a special guest, a gentleman I've gotten to know. We had a nice conversation yesterday. I was like, Jonathan, we need to talk. I need to get to know you. And I was just really impressed with what I have learned about Jonathan Nieuwsma, who is running for 4th Ward Alderman. Welcome to Evanston Live TV, Jonathan.
Thank you, Malika. Thanks for having me, and thanks for providing this public service. And it
Oh,
was
yes.
great chatting with you yesterday. I feel like when this election is over, maybe somebody should sit down and interview you because you've got some really good stories too, it sounds like.
Thank you. Thank you. I do this because I really want people to get to know the candidates. I mean, they hear your campaign speeches, but they don't get to know you. So even in talking to you yesterday, I learned so much about your work in the community. Um, and I'm more than positive a good portion of Evanston doesn't know like where your passion, where your heart really lies. So that's why I do Evanston Live TV.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Uncover the layers. Let's see.
Yeah.
Get through the layers. Get through the layers. So, Jonathan, what I loved about what you talked about yesterday were your 4 E's. Ladies and gentlemen, he has 4 E's that he is focused on. But first, people need to know, one, you are on the Utilities Commission.
I have just finished, what is it, my second term. I was term limited off of the Utilities Commission. So,
You, Citizens Greener Evanston.
correct.
That's your heart. And Evanston Development Co-op.
Correct.
Yes.
I'm a member of that co-op.
This man, you are really passionate and knowledgeable about environmental issues. Now on the council, I mean, I would hear them talking about environmental topics from time to time, but I didn't really see passion about it. And it's so serious, especially now. It is major serious. So I was learning so much from you yesterday. So if you could just tell the viewers about your work in this area, and you care about so many other things, clearly, but that has been, it sounds to me, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, sounds to me like that is, a passion for you, is the environment.
It definitely is a passion, Malika, and in the environment and sustainability and climate action intersects with so many other issues as well. But my time in Evanston has been spent in large part working on environmental issues. I was one of the original board members of Citizens Greener Evanston and served 3 terms, including several years as president of CGE until I was term limited off of the board earlier this spring. And I've really enjoyed doing that work. And I feel like we've accomplished a lot here in Evanston. And with the collaboration of everybody that's involved in the movement, as well as city staff and also the city council. But you mentioned the passion is not always visible at the city council. And that is one thing that I would like to bring to the city council is a passion and energy to really move the ball forward on environmental sustainability. A lot of folks probably don't know that we're already on our 3rd climate action plan here in Evanston. And we passed the first climate action plan back in 2008, and we raised the bar again in 2013, and then we raised the bar again just a few years ago. And so we do have a bold goal for carbon reduction to 0 carbon by 2050. And the work that we've done so far has been relatively easy. But it's going to get a lot harder. And I've spent a lot of time in front of the city council and talking with city council members, trying to advocate for climate action and sustainability. And I want to continue that work as a city council member to make sure we can reach these targets that we've set for ourselves.
Now, Jonathan, Can you break it down just break it down in very simple terms? What is going on with our environment where just an average person understands what the heck you're talking about? Like, how does it impact us day to day with breathing, with drinking water, with food? Yes.
So climate change is happening because of emissions of carbon from burning coal and burning fossil fuels. That's natural gas and gasoline. And so the planet is warming, the climate is changing, and that has impacts on everybody throughout the world, everybody in the country, and people here in Evanston. And as with any event that stresses the system, the folks that are going to be affected the most are the ones least prepared to deal with it. So in terms of how people here in Evanston are going to be affected, we're going to have rainier rainstorms. We're going to have drier droughts. So that means that flooding is going to be an issue. And if you look at the map of where flooding happens and look at the income distribution, you're going to see the populations that are less economically well off be most affected by this kind of thing. Heat emergencies are another thing. There was a heat wave back in the 90s that killed 700 people in Chicago. And predominantly those 700 people were people of color and low-income residents in the city of Chicago, which is where I have the numbers from. I'm not sure what the numeric numbers were here in Evanston, but similar impacts. So cleaner air is important. If you look at asthma rates, African Americans are 4 times more likely to have serious asthma attacks, be hospitalized or die than the average. So climate action, climate justice ties really directly to social justice as well.
Well, you're speaking to me because I am a Black woman and I have asthma. And it's the scariest thing, not being able to breathe, let me tell you. So I am listening to you. I'm hearing what you're talking about, definitely. So break down to people your 4 E's. I love that. You were like, I got.
All right, so we talked a little bit about that, about one of the E's with the environmental sustainability. And we talked a little bit about the second E, which is equity. The third E is engagement, and the fourth E is economic development. Are very brief headings, with some significant amount of detail below each one. So I'm happy to address them one by one or as they come up.
Well, we touched on the environmental, the first E. Your second E, I know everyone would love to know, is equity. What are your views on equity in Evanston?
I think we can do better. Not just on equity, but on many other issues. So I am really proud to live in a community like Evanston that's on the cutting edge of reparations and really part of the national discussion and leading that discussion. I think, and that's awesome. I'm super happy to be to live in a community that's supportive of reparations. I think it's going to be important for the city council to take the recommendations of the equity committee and really make sure that they are, that those recommendations and conclusions came from an open and engaged process with the people of color, the African Americans that have been affected by systemic racism, and take these recommendations and institutionalize them within the city government, within our community. I want to make sure that reparations are not just another feel-good thing that it gets some attention and then goes on the shelf, and we look back in 3 or 4 years and, oh, what happened to reparations? I want to make sure that that really becomes ingrained in the city. So reparations are part of equity. Affordable housing is tied in with reparations, and certainly a really important part of the conversation if we're talking about equity. And I want to make sure that families that have lived in Evanston for generations can continue to live here and not be priced out of town. And and affordable housing is such a complex problem that is confronted by communities around the country, not just here in Evanston. And there is no silver bullet, and there is no one single solution to the affordable housing program. So, I would take an approach that addresses that issue from a number of different directions, and would be open to hearing whatever other good ideas might be out there, because certainly I don't have a monopoly on good ideas. And if we're talking about equity, we also have to talk about our public safety budget. And I am very much in support of a public safety budget that is in alignment with our community priorities. And that means spending less money on a militarized police force and more money on social services, mental health, economic development, education, jobs training. Any
with affordable housing, I feel like a lot of people just immediately associate affordable housing with the Black community, when in fact, I mean, it's a lot of white people take advantage of affordable housing, but they don't publicize that, or we don't see those numbers, but they do. They do.
Yeah, and affordable housing means different things to different people.
Mm-hmm.
Affordable housing is not just Section 8 housing. Affordable housing is a middle-class family being able to live in a space that's big enough for their family, even if they're not going to income qualify for any subsidies. Mm-hmm. How do you address how do you make housing affordable, and how do you prevent housing costs from going through the roof? From a supply and demand standpoint, what you can do is increase the supply of housing, and so that's one of the reasons I got involved in Evanston Development Co-op. Is they are focused on building accessory dwelling units or granny flats, so that homeowners that have a garage off of the alley can build a residential unit on top of that garage, and then that becomes a reasonably priced housing unit that a teacher or a police officer, a community worker, can live in the community that they're serving. And that has required some advocacy with the city to allow accessory dwelling units. And so the city is working on this, but there's a lot more work to be done.
Yes, yes. Well, I am all for Evanston doing more with affordable housing. It's just, I think I hate when Trump was kind of blowing that dog whistle, if we build more affordable housing, it was scaring people in the suburbs, white women in the suburbs. And I actually was on a call maybe 2 months ago. I was the only Black woman on the call, and it was a dog whistle. Affordable housing. We're trying to get more affordable housing in Wilmette so that we can have more Black people move into the neighborhood. I was like, wait, hold up, excuse me. I said, affordable housing is not Black people. Affordable housing, everyone takes advantage of.
Affordable housing is for everyone. Yeah, yeah. And it really should be, it should be everywhere. We shouldn't have, neighborhoods where they've been relegated, all the affordable housing is one neighborhood. And we do have Section 8 housing throughout Evanston, none in the 4th Ward, but it's affordable housing is more than just Section 8. Another thing I'd like to do is put policies in place that discourage converting 2 and 3 flats into single family homes. Because that eliminates supply of housing and has the tendency then to drive up the cost. And I've seen stuff like that happen in our neighborhood. Not quite that example, but just around the corner here, there were 2, let's say, moderately priced single family homes that the developer bought, combined the 2 lots and put up 4 high-end townhouses. So it's easy to say, let's increase the supply of housing, but if we're replacing 2 moderately priced single family homes with 4 high-end townhomes, that's not solving the affordable housing problem. So, like I said before, no simple solutions, and it's really important to have different voices brought into the conversation.
Yes, I agree 100%. Back to reparations. I'm glad that you support it. I mean, if you win, I'm glad you support it to keep that program going. Do you agree with the whole getting qualified for reparations, or do you think just the color of someone's skin is their qualification for reparations? I'm just curious, what's your thought on that?
That is such a tough question. And, I'm a middle-aged white guy. So my opinion is that I should not be the one to answer that question. I have not been affected by structural racism. My family wasn't affected by redlining. My parents could get a mortgage when they bought their first house. So me and my family have not borne the brunt of this problem like the African-American residents of Evanston have. And I don't think it would be right of me to say, here's what I think, because I haven't lived that experience. And so that's why I support the engagement process of the reparations committee, which consists predominantly of African-American families and Black residents of Evanston, and as long as that process is hearing all the voices that they need to hear, I will support the recommendations of that process.
Okay, and Jonathan, the 4th Ward, I mean, we don't hear of too many issues going on in the 4th Ward. I mean, what are some things that are going on in the 4th Ward that you feel definitely need to change? And what do you want to build upon that the incumbent, Don Wilson, has started, and you think it's a great idea and you want to build upon that if you win? Or what hasn't been brought to the table? I know you the environment, I am with you on that 100%.
Yeah. No, that's a good question, Malika. And one of the things that I like about the 4th Ward is we've got just a little bit of a lot of things of Evanston that people like about Evanston. We don't have the lakefront, but we do have some Northwestern buildings. But we've got a part of downtown. We've got 3 really unique small business districts, and we've got a wide range of residential neighborhoods. Evanston, the 4th Ward kind of reflects Evanston as a whole. And Evanston reflects the country as a whole. So everything that's going on, nationwide happens right here in our neighborhood. And so, in answer to your question about what work would I, like to build on, certainly going back to the environment, the city council has passed unanimously each time these 3 climate action plans. Has the city council taken it seriously? Has the city council really made it a goal to implement these plans? I don't think they have. one thing I would like to do to build on that work is to make implementation of the latest climate action plan one of the City Council's stated priorities. Keeping in mind that that climate action plan also has a really centered focus on equity, which I think is important. What has not been going well in the Fourth Ward? Well, we're suffering here in the Fourth Ward as everywhere else with the impacts of COVID. My neighbors across the alley were sick and are getting better, but everybody, everybody knows somebody that's had COVID, and we have, since we do have 3 small business districts and a part of downtown, the economic development aspect of, what can we do to support our local businesses and keep them open, that's going to be a critical thing for the next City Council to consider.
Mm. And what are your thoughts, your ideas, possible solutions for keeping the business district open?
I would like to really develop Evanston as a destination for arts and entertainment. We've got such a creative community here with, visual artists, performing artists, people with a background in the entertainment industry, such as yourself, Malika. We've got Northlight Theater, hopefully is going to come back to Evanston. So I would like to really promote arts and entertainment and make Evanston a destination so we can bring in some money from the outside. I want to support local businesses, and I would like the city to give preferential treatment to local small businesses and certainly women and minority-owned businesses in the city's purchasing and procurement. As far as getting us through COVID, the restaurant industry, which employs so many people, I think there are ways to work with the restaurant community to make sure that there's enough food to feed everybody in Evanston that needs it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that sounds really, really good. Oh, that sounds really good, Jonathan.
I hope we can keep the restaurants. I hope the restaurants are going to still be in business, that we can, when we get through this COVID and we're all vaccinated and, things are starting to open back up again, I hope we can keep the restaurants open until then.
Say you're alderman tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And you're sitting up there, and let's just say the same council is there except for you. You're the only new, and and you've seen how some really stick together. They vote together. They, it's usually the same outcome. And there's been this. Many of the residents complain about a disconnect between the residents and city council.
Mm-hmm.
What will you do different to, 1, close that gap, and 2, get other council members to see things the way that to get more passionate about the environment,
mm-hmm.
to, get more passionate about equity, make better decisions about equity? How will you, because it almost seems like many people believe there's a system in place up there with the current council. Not all of them, but some of them, there's a system already up there. So how do you intend to break that system?
Well, certainly it's time for a change at the city council level. And I think we're getting into one of my E's, which is engagement. So let me address that issue specifically. I think it's really important for city council members to be accessible and available to the community. And so as city council person, I plan to have regular ward meetings. I think Alderman Fleming is a good example, sets a good model for almost monthly meetings. And by meeting with the community regularly, being out in front of folks, getting to know folks, you can start to develop a level of trust. and establish some communications channels in a month when there's nothing particularly happening, nothing major or controversial happening, but we're still out in the community. Aldermen should be out in the community, having conversations and just seeing how folks are doing, what folks are thinking, so that when there is an issue that arises, you can have a better discussion because there's already a level of understanding and trust. Even if there are differing opinions, among residents or between, some residents and the alderman, there's always going to be folks who disagree, and there's always going to be folks who agree. And so having that accessibility and availability is, an important part of being an alderman. An alderman is elected to represent the people of the ward. And so that is, what I would do as alderman, meeting with the people of the Fourth Ward regularly, so that I can represent the consensus of the Fourth Ward and the City Council. As far as the City Council being kind of maybe insular and not fully transparent, transparency is a really important part of engagement, and I think it's really important for City Council activities and all major decisions to be done in full transparency, and not so much behind closed doors in an executive session meeting, but as much as possible in open public meetings, and conversations between aldermen in between City Council meetings. Not to try and do an end run around public meetings, but I would have no problem reaching out to the alderman of the 7th Ward to say, hey, I'm really concerned about this, and can we talk about this? And so developing relationships not only in the community but also within the City Council. And I think it is time for a change, not only in the 4th Ward but several other wards as well.
Mm-hmm. And if you could have a meeting with the city manager, Erica Storley,
mm-hmm.
tomorrow, Monday morning, what would be the first thing you would say as an alderman in terms of the city budget? What needs to take place with the city budget in this time period that we're in right now?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. If I've met with Erica several times in my capacity as president of Citizens Greener Evanston, and I have found her to be open to listening. And so I do certainly have some questions for City Manager Storley with regards to some personnel issues that have happened, and I'll take a moment to point out or to talk about the process which led to Erica Storley being appointed permanent city manager. And I do think that that process was not fully transparent and did not fully engage the community. And I've spoken about how important those two things are. And so it was a missed opportunity to really do the process right. I'm not begrudging the fact that it took so long because COVID hit and we had to address that. And I don't think anyone's saying that the city manager appointment should have been made earlier in the year, but the process that brought us to where we are today, I think, left a lot to be desired. Having said that, I think Erica Storley is a great person and has managed the city through COVID quite well. And looking forward at the budget, we're going to have to talk about how to increase revenues, keeping taxes down. Nobody wants to pay more in income tax than we already have. And really, let's take a harder look at our public safety budget. because I don't think that we can honestly say that not funding positions in the police department that had not been filled can count as defunding the police. So I want to have some hard conversations there.
Interesting. And more on the police reform. You know, some police officers, I'm sure, feel a certain way, you know, that people are pushing for more funds to be put more towards mental health, you know, handling situations more so that way. Then they feel like certain areas of Evanston do need heavy policing.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, I've heard complaints of, you know, there's a lot of Caucasian Evanstonians who call them out for bogus 911 calls because of a Black person walking down the street that they've never seen before. So they just call the police. I understand that those calls are regular, you know. I mean, how would you address that? How would you address that?
Yeah, that's another good question. I think, you know, white people need to step up and help other white people. And there's a lot that that we have to unlearn. You know, some messages that you know, growing up in the American society that have been kind of not forced upon us, but that we grew up thinking about. And, you know, so there's a lot we have to unlearn as white people. And I think, you know, white people talking to other white people and pointing out, like, you know what, that's not racist. Or, I mean, that's racist. That's not right. You know, we don't have to call the police on those folks. Just go out there and talk to them and say you know, ask them if you can help. You know, so a certain portion of that is incumbent upon us as residents and us as citizens to handle stuff before it goes to the police. Alternative 911, you know, I think is a good idea to handle things that aren't emergencies, and, you know, making sure that, you know, the officers and the first responders who are working within that system are trained to be able to say, you know what, this is not a police emergency. We don't need to send a squad car with flashing lights. You know, we can handle that in a different way that doesn't escalate a situation. Doesn't take a non-situation and make it bad. It takes a non-situation and leaves it at that.
Do you think people should start getting fined for calling the police for bogus reasons?
Certainly, if it's a completely bogus, you know, a bogus reason, I think a fine would not be inappropriate. You know, but you get to what people are going to call the police if they feel threatened or feel scared. And I think what we really need to do is build up a sense of community and get to know our neighbors, get to know folks that live in our neighborhood, live in our town, so that people don't feel threatened and don't feel scared. And that will, you know, by doing these doing that community building, you know, that will reduce the number of bogus calls.
How do you get people to come out, though? I mean, once COVID is over and we get back to some degree of normalcy, how do you get people to come out and engage and get to know their neighbors?
Yeah, it's tough. You know, we all live in our little bubbles, certainly now during COVID. But you know, as an alderman, you know, there's a responsibility to be available to the community and make yourself known and have regular meetings, so that not only do people get to know the alderman, get to know the city government, but get to know each other in the process of attending these community meetings. And so having a ward meeting is not just an opportunity for the person who lives down the street to talk to their alderman. it's the person who lives down that side of the street to get to know the person who lives around the corner and down that side of the street and get to know them. And so I think that's really useful, as a community building exercise. Here in our neighborhood, we have a neighborhood listserv, a Google email list. That's one way of building the community. We used to have block parties back when we could, get out and mingle with our neighbors, with our neighbors, and that was another good way of meeting folks that you really should know because they live, just down the street. And you'll find, that when you meet people, relationships develop, and once you meet your neighbors, the community is, feels that much more like home.
Yes, yes. Well, if you could figure that out, that would be awesome, because it's hard to get people to come out these days.
It is.
Before COVID.
It certainly is. And, the city tries to do a good job of engaging with the public, but no matter how hard, no matter what they do, there's always going to be folks that didn't get the message for whatever reason. And as soon as they see the truck, out in front of their house doing tree trimming or, not street washing, but, tearing up the street, they're going to say, I didn't hear about this. How did I not hear about this? So it's incumbent upon us as citizens to be engaged and know what's going on in the community. But, the city and community leaders, certainly including the alderman, need to, be very open and communicative with the residents. Regular newsletters over, the email newsletters, but engagement on the neighborhood community groups and other social networks that exist. Like my kids go to Washington School, so there is another channel for communication. As alderman, I would want to make sure I reach out to other schools in the neighborhood, to Nichols and to Dewey, and make sure that I'm linked in with those networks as well, so that when there's community news that needs to be discussed, that I'm bringing folks into the conversation. You can't always just expect folks to know that that their input is needed. You have to go. Sometimes you have to drag people to the table.
And how accessible do you plan? Like, what do you do for a living, Jonathan?
I'm a consultant in the renewable energy business, and so my business was affected by COVID. My main client cut down my hours by more than half. Fortunately, my wife is able to work from home, and her employer hasn't been affected. So the Nieuwsma family's doing okay. So professionally, my background is engineering, and I do renewable energy development. So we're going to be able to make it through COVID. We're lucky in that regard. So I can focus on getting my kids through school, and until they're finally able to go back to school, which is going to be a great day for everybody in the
community. Yes. In terms of being accessible as an alderman, because you hear those complaints that aldermen aren't responding to the emails, they're not answering the call, they're never home, they just can't be reached.
Yeah, I'm here, I work in town. Earlier in my career, I spent more time out of town than at home, more time out of the country than I did at my own house. But since I moved here with my family, shifted my career to doing stuff that meant more to me and spoke more to my values, and realized that I would rather work on renewable energy and doing some consulting and be home with my family for dinner every night than be on a plane, be on a plane on the way back from who knows where. As cool as that was when I was 32 before I got married and had kids. So I work in town, I'm around. Pre-COVID, I would have lunch on Davis Street almost every day. So I'm in the neighborhood. I'm walking my dog. Happy to chat with folks when I see them on the street.
All right. Well, I think people will want to know that you are accessible and that you're home, and you chose to be home. You could have still been traveling. Well, not now, but
Right.
that glamorous, adventurous career, and you chose to be home. And now you really want to make some changes to Evanston. You really, it sounds to me like you're really bringing a lot of information that's needed. And then coming from your career, you're bringing so much more knowledge about energy and the environment and everything.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm certainly passionate about the environment, and I know what I know about energy and renewable energy, but there are plenty of folks who know way more than I do about so many things that, I think one of the main things I have to do as alderman is just keep my ears open and keep my heart open and listen and learn from folks that have expertise that I don't. Listen and learn from folks that have lived experiences that I don't. And just make sure that the work I do in the community is beneficial to all the people that live here. And that applies whether I'm on the city council or not. But certainly a city council member should be doing more listening than talking.
I think people will appreciate that. I think people will appreciate that, Jonathan.
Yeah.
One more question. I got you for about 2 more minutes.
Okay.
So I know we're getting write-ins. So I mean, I still have to find out who some of the write-ins are now. We've got so many candidates. Oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to fit everybody in. Hopefully, before April, but it'd been great to get them all in before February, but I don't know that that's going to happen with the holidays. But what would you say you bring that the incumbent hasn't brought that you think would be a great quality, or your opponent, Diane Goldring, what do you think differentiates you from them?
Good question. And if I had to differentiate myself from the incumbent Alderman Wilson, who, by the way, is suffering from COVID. So, best wishes to Don. I hope he gets well and he's fully healthy so we can have a vigorous debate. But I think, Alderman Wilson is now in his 3rd term. He's run unopposed the last 2 cycles. And, 8 years ago, only 600 people even voted for alderman. He was the only alderman on the candidate. So the only candidate on the ballot. So I think compared to Don, I'm going to bring some fresh energy, some fresh engagement, some enthusiasm, and certainly an availability and responsiveness to the community. But I'm also doing, I'm coming from a position of experience, and having been president of Citizens Greener Evanston and having been chairman of the Utilities Commission, I have been in front of the city council numerous times over the last decade, engaged in the work of the city. So I'm bringing that experience to the table as well. So on the one hand, it's time for a change. And I am that person compared to Don, but I'm also bringing the experience that I've had over the last decade, working with city staff, working with city council members.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Jonathan. It's been great talking to you again, learning so much more. And regardless,
thank you, Malika.
Yeah, regardless of what happens, I definitely want to have you back on, regardless if you win or not, because you know so much about what we all need to be paying closer attention to, which is the environment and what's happening with all of that. And, you know, we know the environment is in trouble, but we don't really know. So we don't have anyone to really break it down to us. So I would love to have you back on just for that talk alone.
I would be happy to talk to you anytime, Malika, and I'd be happy to refer you to other folks that would be worth talking to as well.
Okay.
And I'll repeat what I said earlier. Somebody needs to put you, switch the seats around and interview you and about your interesting background as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Well, I know we're going to have you back on even for the race because the race is already heated and you all are just at the starting line. It's getting
we are, yeah, starting line is coming up, isn't it? So we're,
yes.
This is really new, really exciting. First time I've run for public office. I've been, working in the, in public service for the last 10 years, but, really I'm looking forward to the opportunity not only to run for alderman, but to serving as alderman to continue, the work that I have been doing over the last decade. But I do have a whole newfound respect for any candidate that's ever run for any office because it's, it's,
yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. But we'll definitely have you back on before April as the race gets going.
Yeah.
And, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, and we wish you the absolute best, Jonathan.
Thank you, Malika.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. This has been Malika of Evanston Live TV, and that was Jonathan Nieuwsma. So you all be sure to, if you have any more questions for him, I'll put his information in the description so you can reach out to him and get some more questions answered. And we'll be sure to have him back. He'll be back on for the forum January 7th. Yes, January 7th. I got all these forums lined up here on Evanston Live TV, but he'll be back January 7th with the incumbent and his opponents. I don't know if we got any more write-ins. The write-ins have been popping up, so you all will be able to talk to them directly. I really want it to be about the residents, and you all talk to them, ask your questions, and get your answers, get engaged, and see who will be the new leader, who the new leaders will be in Evanston. So you all stay tuned here, Evanston Live TV.